Nate, one of the things that I've said for years on the show is Charlotte no longer has anybody that she can work up to. She is so much better than
Thank you.
all of the other talent, and I don't say that because she's your daughter. That's just
Well,
that's
I
just
know
brutal.
that. You don't
It's
have to.
brutal honesty. But my question is, when you're in a position like that as a talent, where there is nobody better than you, how do you improve on your own?
Well, here's the thing. I never thought about it when I was in my prime, but believe me, she is never going to be satisfied with her performance, no matter how great it is. I mean, no matter how great the match, she and Rhea Ripley had a year ago or whatever that was. I still can't get over it. When she did that inverted back flip over off that suplex, I mean, who does that at 5'11" and a buck 55? I mean, really. And she looked like $1 million. She dresses immaculately. You know she's going to bust out a wardrobe, knock down that door, and everybody's going to go, "What the WTF?" She's back. I'm
Well, Rick,
so excited. Huh?
I've been saying for a long, long time. Anybody that'll listen, that Charlotte is the standard. And when she said that, um, no disrespect to all of y'all, but I am the line. Everything else is behind me. Hey, I don't know what you did in your DNA, but it imprinted on her
Yeah.
because
No,
I
hey,
know
listen.
she didn't write that shit down.
No, she
Nobody
was.
wrote that that told her to say it. That is her.
I don't think anybody wrote that. I think she
Hell
finally
no.
realized it. I
Yeah.
think it's taken her this long to get it because she just always she can have the best match in the world and she'll question one thing and nobody even knows. Maybe a few of us would see it, but I mean, she's basically just in another place. I mean, she's so much better than I ever was. Oh my God. I mean, give me a break. I'm just honored to be. I'm honored to have her last name.
Yeah,
That's
wow,
very nice. That's a
that
hell of
is
a compliment.
that
It is a
definitely is.
compliment.
Rick, you mentioned Rhea Ripley before, and I, for years I always looked at Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné as, the steamboat to you
Yeah.
for Charlotte.
Mhm.
Has Rhea Ripley kind of stepped up and taken that position? Because the matches that Charlotte has had with Rhea has been, these are WrestleMania moment matches.
Oh, I know.
Do you,
Absolutely. I've always said that I actually do. I call Sasha Steamboat all the time because I thought Sasha and Ashley had the best chemistry of all time. I don't know that. I don't know that. I just think that match that Rhea and Ashley had might have been as good. I mean, do you remember the match? I think it was in Boston where and I'm sitting in a gorilla next to Vince, and where they had a cage match, and somehow
yes.
Sasha got banged in the cage, and it
Mm-hmm.
fell out before the match started. Do you remember, guys? Do you
Yep.
remember that match?
Yes.
Yeah.
In Boston.
Well,
Yep.
I'm sitting there and I went, God damn, what excuse my language, what just happened? And that was all part of the match. And if I'm a Mark and I'm going, what the hell happened? Did Sasha get hurt? I mean, then they went and tore the joint down. But I mean, she'll spend so much time in preparation. I'm sure she just exhausts herself just preparing mentally to be that much better than anybody else, and that's what makes her who she is. She was the same way in high school. So they
Nate,
should, sorry, go
Nate,
ahead.
you've always been very complimentary of Sasha's work,
Oh my
actually
God, Sasha's
calling her
great.
Steamboat. But let me ask you this, and I don't know if you get to watch a lot. Yes, Sasha went to AEW where she's making a considerable amount of money, has
Yeah.
considerable more freedom than she did in the WWE. She's positioned at the top, but I don't believe she's able to be in the ring with anybody who's going to bring the best out of her.
Exactly.
How do you look? How do you look at that situation?
Um, I look at Sasha as being able to. She has that mindset that she can do whatever she wants to do because she's that good, and it's the truth. I think that ultimately she'll end up back in the WWE. I mean, if you look at the class, if you look at the last 10 years, what Sasha's been able to do and what Ashley's been able to do, and maybe a couple others, who stays on top? I mean, think about name the guys that can stay on top for 10 years. I mean, never take a step back, always
Right.
in the main event. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Whether they're winning or losing, they're in the main event. And that to have a 10-year run, like Seth has had a 10-year run now, Ambrose has had a 10-year run, Roman's had a 10-year run. I mean, Randy's had a 20-year run. I mean, that's amazing. To be on top for 20 years. John Cena, same way. John started out on top. He's never taken a step back. He's walked away once in a while to make a movie, but he's never taken a step back. But to be on top for 10 straight years and know that you probably have 5 more if you elect to have them, you know?
So, Nate, if Mark, I just want to do one quick follow up. Nate, if Sasha, as you said, ever did come back to the WWE, does Sasha versus Charlotte become bigger than it ever was?
Well, you want my oh, of course. I mean, I don't. It's hard to say. You know what I think the biggest pay-per-view match they could ever have is Pete Sasha is Ashley and Becky Lynch. I could fire that up again.
Okay.
Round 2. I could fire that up. But of course, Sasha coming back, or the another match with Rhea. I mean, all the girls. You know, first of all, everybody, if you're on that roster, you're really good. But the big difference, and that this is one of the sticking points in my mind, the difference between good and being great. I mean, that the word great is, like I've said this for 10 years, it's been passed out. Oh, he's a great worker because he had 1 match, 2 matches, you know what I mean? And then you got to look at who he was working with, or she, and then you got to figure out, can they do it night after night after night after night? You know what I mean? So I just, I mean, Ash will call me and she'll say, Dad, man, we just killed it in the house show. We went 35 minutes. I mean, you know what I mean? She doesn't care whether there's, like kind of like me, whether there's 150 or 100,000. She's going to go out there and put herself in a position to have the best match possible on the card.
Rick, don't you think that's a byproduct of her work rate and her being a perfectionist? I don't think that there's anything wrong with tearing yourself down and trying to be better, because I mean, I don't know if it'll ever be perfect, but at least strive for it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and she does. I mean, she, meal plans. God forbid she have a glass of wine. I mean,
Live a little.
Well, maybe a little bit, but I mean, I'm not going to have drinks. I'll come see you, but I'm not going drinking. Okay, God, calm down.
Nate, I want to ask you a question about.
And by God, Dad, do not call me when you're drinking. I don't want to hear from you.
You talked about Charlotte calling you saying we went 35 minutes, and your biggest claim, one of your biggest claims to fame, is going an hour every single night and twice on Sundays. Mm-hmm. Did going an hour every single night eventually become easy for you? Were you just able to do it with your eyes closed because you were so used to it?
It was easy if I had a good opponent. It's funny. I posted this. I see Ricky at these signings, right? And I tell people this story, and I don't know whether people believe it or not. He and I did 9-hour Broadways, 2 weeks in a row. It's like me and Steamboat did 7 90-minute matches 1 week in a row. I mean, it's a long time, and those matches are easy when you got an opponent like Ricky Morton. My God, I mean, Ricky will always be underestimated because of his ability. But I mean, and Ricky Steamboat, I mean, the 2 greatest workers I've ever been in the ring with, and are the best workers I've ever known, are Shawn Michaels and Ricky Steamboat. Ricky never worked heel. It's kind of like trying to make Jack Briscoe a heel. But Steamboat and Shawn, to me, are the 2 best I've ever been in the ring with. And I'm not taking away from anybody else, but I mean, it's hard to argue against Steamboat. And of course, Shawn Michaels, I think, is recognized universally as probably the best worker in the business. And when you're still considered the best worker in the business 10 years after you've been retired, then you must have been pretty damn good.
Hey, Rick,
he definitely was.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I still to this day have people say, man, like who is the who's who of who you wrestle with, and Undertaker and Shawn Michaels,
Yeah.
Are up there, and to be in there with you and Triple H, like that foursome of guys, and that I'm not even gonna go through the Cena and Batista and Bret Hart is the only one that escaped me.
Yeah. No, Bret.
Oh man, I that's the only regret of my life in wrestling is I never got to wrestle Bret.
Yeah, well, Bret's a machine. Probably technically the best ever. Does that make sense?
Wow.
Sure.
Technically, if you look at the mechanics of the match and the technical, where I have people always say, well, I had a routine. Well, when you go an hour every night, it's pretty hard to come up with a different routine. nine different hours. So there may be some similarity in the matches, guys. Sorry for that, but I even represent Bret Hart today, man. I got the pink on, man.
Yeah. I love it. And those were great names, Mark, you mentioned, but they don't hold a candle to Ric Flair. Rick, Mark mentioned
Rick
Triple
was
H.
in there.
I know he was, but to put those names in the same sentences, Ric Flair is disrespectful. Ric Flair stands on his own. There's nobody that compares to Ric Flair. Okay,
I forgot. You
all right,
Flair
all right. Just so you know,
I'm gonna go up and play at the bar tonight.
But Rick, Mark did mention Triple H, new regime in the WWE, arguably the most successful regime right now. I mean, you look at dollars and cents, maybe the most successful period in the history of the WWE. Just talk about this new regime and Triple H being head of creative, because since he's become head of creative, Rick, I got to tell you, there's not a lot to complain about when it comes to the WWE.
No, and everybody's happy. I think it's a lot because, number one, he's a student of the business. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If I've ever been a student of the business, from the time he started, he became a student of the business. And I've told you the story about when I introduced him to Harley Race, right, for the first time.
Yeah, you did, but please say it again. It's great.
Okay, so he comes into WCW, and it's Paul Levesque, right? So Harley's sitting there, and I go. He goes, "Can you introduce me to Harley Race?" I said, "Yeah." What the hell? Come on, man, you're part of the locker room now. So he goes, and I have to use this voice because I have the humor with it. It's like, I said. Hey, Harley, this is Paul Levesque. He's, new and just coming in the company and going to be with us now, hopefully for a long time. And it's like, Hunter went, "How do you do, Mr. Race?" And Harley goes, "Who trained you?" "Killer Kowalski. He's the shits." But that was Harley, right? I mean, God, I just loved it.
But Rick, it's interesting that you say that, because earlier in the show today we were talking about the importance of wrestling schools and how you get broken in, and that mattered back in the day also.
Oh, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying the way Harley didn't pull any punches, man. He used to say to me, it's one of my favorite stories too. We'd be in St. Louis, and he'd say to me, You're gonna go over Brody tonight. Go tell him I said so." "No, Harley, I'm not going to." "You go tell him." I walk in the locker room, Brody smoking a joint. I go, "What do you want to do tonight, Frank?" "I'll get back to you, Ricky." Okay. I walk down the hall, bump into Harley again. "Did you tell him? If you don't, I'll get this straightened out." Well, guess what? We ended up doing an hour. That was the greatest story. That went on for years. You go tell Brody you're taking it tonight. I said, have the referee tell him.
Wait, Dave, hold on. Nate, a guy like Brody who was going to do whatever he wanted to do, did he, quote unquote, fall in line and listen to you when you guys were in there?
Oh, yeah. No, he trusted me.
Yep.
Him and I had some, well, I would say that one match we had on Japanese TV out of St. Louis was as good an hour as you could have with a big guy and a small guy. And he sold for me, man. He let me hit him, and he sold, and he was always careful. I mean, when you see him coming across that ring with that hair wild as hell, with that flying knee, I would just close my eyes.
Say, what an athlete, man.
Yeah, but you know what? He never hurt me. And he would pick me up in that twirl around slam and throw me. He was great for me. You had to earn his respect, but if he respected you, he worked with you. But
Rick,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. With Brody and of course the legacy and the myth of Bruiser Brody, you can say the same about the Von Erichs. The Von Erichs on the tip of everybody's tongue. That movie, The Iron Claw, got a lot of critical accolades. And you always hear about how good David Von Erich was. And obviously Kerry Von Erich had that moment with you at Texas Stadium. But did you look at David Von Erich as one day being an NWA World Heavyweight Champion?
David, most certainly. He could have been there. And I never foresaw that issue with David. I knew about the other kids, not Kevin so much, but I knew that Kerry was. I mean, that match we had in Texas Stadium was horrible, but Kerry was not himself. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think he was a little under the influence, right? So, and of course, he missed his shot, and they gave it back to me 10 days later in Japan. But David most certainly, I think, would have been an NWA champion. I think Ted DiBiase could have been an NWA champion. I think if he wanted to travel, I don't know that he'd want to travel that hard. I think Arn Anderson could have been an NWA champion. It required a guy that didn't mind being gone. I was gone 6 months at a time. Not 6 weeks. I'm talking about 6 months, and I'm doing New Zealand one day. I mean, that guy that wrote that book about me did a lot of research. I can't remember what it's called, where I did Australia for an hour in Melbourne, flew to Auckland, did an hour there, flew from Auckland back to St. Louis, did an hour there, flew from St. Louis to Atlanta, did an hour there, and then flew to Tokyo and did 3 hours in a row there all in the same week. So, yeah, people want to know why I have a drink.
Nate, we always compare wrestling to rock and roll on the show. That crosses over. Rock and roll bands who form, they have a camaraderie, they have a friendship, and then they go in business together. And sometimes over the years, these rock and roll bands just fall apart, and they all go their separate ways, and they're never able to get back on the same page. How's your relationship these days with the other members of the Horsemen?
I don't see them enough to have a relationship. Does that make sense?
Okay, so there's no texting or calling on the phone or anything like that.
Oh yeah, obviously I text Arn about they had a terrible loss this year, as did Kevin Nash. I mean, it just seems like every time you turn around, there's tragedy, and when it should be us, because of what I've done to ourselves, it's one of our children, and when I see him at events and that, but I live in Tampa now, and I don't want to leave this out of the picture either. Wendy's had an unbelievable rough time, guys, as you can imagine. And even though she and I aren't together every day, we remain very close. And it's going to take her a long time to heal. So I'm not trying to change the subject, but the point I was trying to make is that I see him at conventions, but Tully lives out in Texas and is really wrapped up in the ministry. Barry, I just saw at Bray Wyatt's, but Barry just he just elects to stay home. He takes care of his mom, Julie, Blackjack Mulligan's wife, man. I saw her at the funeral and I went, Jesus. I mean, the times we used to have Mulligan and I, oh, God. It just, I mean, to see like Terry, we lost Terry Funk. I mean, I had some world-class matches with Terry. And when Terry wanted to work before he got into when he first got the belt, he was a great world champion. I mean, then he got, like I did when he got older, put some comedy into it and all that. But we still had some good matches at the end. But, you'd hate to see these guys go, but it catches up with you. That's why I say to everybody, tell everybody that you love them every day, because you never know. There's nothing's guaranteed for tomorrow.
Well, you did enough to live forever, Rick. That's you and Terry, like y'all will never be forgotten. So it's like that's a big plus to it. We're not meant to stay here forever.
No, I realize that, but in the meantime, I'm not going to let a minute slide by. I don't care if I got walking pneumonia.
I'm with you.
It's ugly sweater day at the bars today.
Well, Rick, I do want to mention this because, whenever Violetta says to me, my wife says, "What do you want for Christmas?" I always just go to RicFlairShop.com.
Yeah.
And, and I don't care, you guys could call me a quote unquote Mark. I don't care. I'm wearing a Ric Flair t-shirt as I'm interviewing Ric Flair. I don't give a shit. I got this off of RicFlairShop.com. So anybody that wants to get me anything, just go to RicFlairShop.com, t-shirts.
By all means, go to RicFlairShop.com.